Peace, Love, Liberty Radio version 4.0. Prepare for launch.
OTC is go.
Packetbus is go.
PTC is go.
LPS is go.
Houston flight is go.
Pilot go.
STM is go.
Safety-com is go.
STU is go.
LRD is go. SRO is go.
CDI is go.
Launch Director, NTD, our launch team is ready to proceed at this time.
99, proceeded, 3, 2, 1, ignition. Right away, Houston.
Consequences so severe, so pull your trigger quickly, dear. Our patriots are acting up, let's punish them with fear. Hey, hey!
Hey, welcome to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio, online at fppradio.com. That's where you can find all of your listening options. And don't forget, if you like the show and you appreciate what I'm doing and you appreciate the other things that I'm doing, because it's not just Peace, Love, Liberty Radio that I produce. There's a daily 5-minute newscast that I produce 7 days a week that I've been doing for a couple of years now. So if you want to hear more programming, more podcasts from me, then I encourage you to join the Fans program. Fans are friends, allies, and Numeri supporters. Numeri, by the way, is just a fancy word for monetary. So, you can throw me as little as $3 per month to join the Fans program. And yes, I picked the fancy word for money because FAMS program just doesn't sound right. It sounds better to say, I'm a fan of this show. And that's exactly what you are, or at least I hope you will be. So look into the Fans program. You get perks like ad-free versions of this show, as well as that daily 5-minute newscast that I produce. And also, I put out a print newspaper every month. You join the Fans program, you get the newspaper in your mailbox every month. Go to fans.fppradio.com. That's fans.fppradio.com. And if you're already a member of the Fans program, thank you very much. So now let's jump into version 4.0 of Peace, Love, Liberty Radio. And, I really don't know which one of these two articles to start with, so I'm just going to randomly switch tabs on my browser, and no whammies, stop. And, all right, I'm going with an article titled, "There Are No Mistakes." And when I read this title, it reminded me of, do you remember Bob Ross? The guy with the big poofy hair that used to be on PBS that would always paint. And he's like, we didn't mean to put that there, but it's fine. There's no mistakes, just happy little accidents. Let's turn this into a cloud, or let's turn this into a little bush. And he would always take whatever mistake he made on the canvas and turn it into something else and say there are no mistakes. There are only happy little accidents. Well, there's an article that came across my email earlier today titled, "There Are No Mistakes." It's written by someone named Michael Feely, and it's posted on mariashriver.com. I will post the link in the show notes so you can read it at your leisure without hearing Darryl interrupt, because that's what I do. I start reading an article, and then I intersperse, hey, here's what I think about this. And if you're not familiar with version 4.0 of Peace, Love, Liberty Radio, this is the fourth sort of iteration of the show, where the show started off the first 100 episodes. It was a live 2-hour show, live every Sunday on the Liberty Radio Network. And then after 100 episodes, I decided, you know what, I'm going to change this up a little bit and do a 3-time-a-week podcast. And it's live to tape, although technically it's not tape, it's live to whatever hard drive sort of thing. But live to tape is basically the radio term, the media term of when you pretend it's live. You don't go and post-production and edit things out. So if I wind up sounding like an idiot or forgetting what I'm saying, I don't go in and edit that out to where it's all seamless. It's live to tape, so it's kind of live, but not really, if that makes any sense. Thrice weekly, but I was still basically covering the same sorts of things, still covering, news, politics sort of stuff. And then at episode 200, there were some changes, not necessarily to the way I was doing the show, but slight tweak to the format as far as where the commercial breaks were, how long the segments, the intro music that you heard. There was a change to that at episode 200, so that would be version 3. And then version 4.0 kicked off with episode 300 earlier this year. And version 4.0 is a shift completely away from me talking about news and politics to sort of a self-help sort of show, but it's a show that I'm making for myself as much as I'm making for anybody else. So I am, becoming a better version of me while I help you become a better version of you. But before I get into this, since I'm already explaining the whole, version 4.0 sort of thing, let me backtrack to what caused the creation of version 4.0 of Peace, Love, Liberty Radio. It wasn't just I wanted to find something to change up at episode 300. Although, that kind of is it. Every 100 episodes or so, I want to make a little tweak. But because in March of last year, I drastically changed my diet. I lost 145 pounds in 11 months. I've since gained a little bit of weight, but part of that's because I was traveling every weekend for several months with this whole, presidential campaign thing that I was doing until I wound up losing the Libertarian Party's nomination over Memorial Day weekend. But due to travel, it wasn't exactly easy to stick to the diet. And I'm one of those people that I'm a stress eater. So if I get stressed, I'll eat. And when you travel, you get more stressed, or at least I do. But not like oh my God, I don't know what's going to happen next kind of stress. Just one of those sort of, like your body is going through a kind of stress, but it's not a mental stress, if that makes any sense. People that have dealt with that understand completely what I'm talking about. But anyway, I drastically changed my diet. So I was changing the outside. And then earlier this year, I started listening to some self-help podcasts, and I'll explain a little bit more about that in the next segment here on Peace, Love, Liberty Radio. The Doublespeak Dictionary by Leslie Starr O'Hara satirizes the marked difference between the ideal of we the people and the reality of we the elite, while offering an insightful glimpse into the clockworks of the totalitarian mind. Ever irreverent but never irrelevant, the Doublespeak Dictionary serves as a subversive and humorous but timely reminder that the emperor has no clothes. The Doublespeak Dictionary is available from Amazon.com and all major bookstores. Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless, free market, non-political currency. Bitcoin cannot be inflated or controlled by any government. By using their money, you are helping the state. Stop doing it. You have an incredible alternative available now. Learn it, use it, spread it. Get started with Bitcoin at weusecoins.com. That's weusecoins.com.
You're listening to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio, online at fppradio.com.
So earlier this year, and yes, I can be long-winded, so if you've never listened to the show before, this is sort of how it goes, where I'll start talking about something and I go off on like these little sidetracks and a tangent from the sidetrack, and then ultimately I realize, oh yeah, this is where the train of thought was, and I hop back on the train at some point, way down the road after, taking a quote-unquote shortcut that winds up taking me, 10 extra miles to get there. That's what happens. That's how my brain works. So anyway, I was explaining how version 4.0 of the show came about. And it started as I said, in like March of last year, changing my diet, wanting to lose a lot of weight. I went from weighing 317 pounds late February of 2015 to mid-February of this year. I was 172 pounds. Again, I've gained a little bit of weight. I'm about 194 right now. But again, part of that was because of, traveling and not necessarily being able to stick to the diet. But I'm still, healthy. I'm watching what I eat, and I'm eating more natural food. So that's the changing the outside. And earlier this year, I stumbled across a podcast called The School of Greatness. And it was just a weird sort of thing to where I happened to have seen somebody posted some guy named Lewis Howes, who I had never heard of before, interviewed Alanis Morissette. And back 20-some-odd years ago, I had a huge crush on Alanis Morissette. So I was like, all right, I'll take a listen to the podcast just because I like Alanis Morissette. And so I listened to the podcast and thought it was very interesting that she was talking about like homeschooling and unschooling and other sorts of things that you don't necessarily expect some sort of celebrity to talk about. Like they were talking about liberty ideals without necessarily saying, this is a liberty podcast, we're targeting libertarians. No, it's just normal people. And I know it sounds kind of funny to call Alanis Morissette a normal person, like she's this uber celebrity sort of person. But, like they were just discussing these things that are normal for them. And I'm like, wow, it's so amazing that, people that aren't necessarily libertarians are talking about some of these things. And so then I started listening to more of his podcast. And about the same time, I was listening to the School Sucks podcast with Brett Venott. And they were talking about various ways to start getting organized using task managers, stuff along those lines. And it all just sort of fell into place of, wait a second, maybe I should change up the way I do my podcast. Because, talking about politics 3 times a day, and actually I do it a lot more than 3 times a day, but, that can really sort of wear on your brain and get you tired mentally, emotionally, and physically. So I decided, you know what, I've gone through this change myself. Maybe I can, help other people sort of become a better version of themselves. And so that's how version 4.0 came about, to where it's, kind of a self-help thing. And I'll still talk about the ideas of liberty because that's important. But again, you have to take care of yourself before you can try helping other people take care of themselves. And that's really what, a free society is all about, is being able to help other people get a hand up, not a hand out. But you can't really give somebody a hand up if you're lying flat on your back as well. So now let's jump into this article. There are no mistakes. The author begins, how often do you flash back to something that happened in the past and you feel upset? You tell yourself, big mistake, and you can barely stand to think about it. Well, you can change how you feel about that by considering one of the most valuable lessons I've learned in my life. There are no mistakes. And before I continue, I just want to interject a small bit of humor, something that I have seen floating around on the internet the last couple of months. It said, everything happens for a reason. Sometimes that reason is you're stupid and you make bad decisions. And I laugh at this because I have done stuff to where like I can go back and admit, yep, that was a pretty dumb decision. And it's not that I am an idiot, but sometimes we don't necessarily think clearly. And so if you ever feel like, you've made a bad decision, you probably had. But again, it's not because you're an idiot, although, you can sometimes not use the best parts of your brain when decision making. So not trying to insult anyone at all, trying to interject some humor. The article here continues. He says, I first heard this idea, that being there are no mistakes. I first heard this idea while studying to become a life and career coach, and it became a core value. Here's the principle that I learned from my training at IPEC. That's the Institute for Professional Excellence in Coaching. So here it is. Here's the principle that he learned. There are no mistakes, only different varieties of ways to experience life and remember more of who we are. The decisions we make stem from our minds, our heart, or both. People make choices based on their past, their belief systems, their values, and perhaps even on the collective consciousness that's ingrained in their DNA. Today's printout is simply a picture that was created yesterday. We always choose what we believe is the best possible choice in any given situation. Instead of directing energy towards the past by beating ourselves up over so-called mistakes, why not ask, what is the lesson? What can be learned from this experience? What kindness in those 7 lovely words? What can be learned from this experience? And, this is really something that we all have to think about. Think about the thing that when you hear mistake and you think about that one big decision in your life that you're like, yep, that was a mistake. If I could go back and do it all over again, I would prevent myself from making that mistake. But would you really think about all of the things that would not have happened had you not made that mistake, whatever that mistake was? I know exactly what my big mistake was, but I really don't know if I would change it. I don't know if I would, because I know for a fact that I would not be sitting here right now recording this podcast if I had not made that mistake that I did 16, almost 17 years ago. What can be learned from this experience? Well, I'll tell you ways that you can figure it out here on Peace, Love, Liberty Radio.
Are you sick of government lackeys who say you didn't build that? Are you tired of elitists who think you need a government permission slip for everything? Everything you do is an A to B conversation, and the government should see their way out of it. Create true free markets by adopting the BIPCOT No Government License. The BIPCOT No Gov license allows use or modification of any product, service, or software except by governments or government agents. Go to BIPCOT.org. That's Bravo, India, Papa, Charlie, Oscar, Tango.org.
In 1999, Darryl W. Perry began a search for traditional values, which led him down a path to the ideas of liberty. He tells the story in A Rebel's Journey, My Path to Liberty. Of the book, Dr. Brian Sovereign says, sometimes it's funny, and sometimes I think it's crazy, but it's always authentic. Find A Rebel's Journey, My Path to Liberty by Darryl W. Perry on Facebook, read reviews on Amazon, ask for A Rebel's Journey wherever books are sold, or visit arebelsjourney.com.
Hi, this is Davi Barker from ShinyBadges.com, and you're listening to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio with Darryl W. Perry.
I'll tell you something that's not a mistake, and that is buying gold and silver. And I'll tell you something else. When you buy gold and silver from Roberts & Roberts Brokerage, you know you're buying from a trusted source. They've been around since 1977, helping people buy and sell precious metals like gold and silver. And they take Bitcoin for precious metal purchases and have permanently removed the minimum purchase amount for all orders paid in the digital currency. So call Roberts & Roberts Brokerage today for knowledgeable advice on buying and selling precious metals and a forward-thinking approach to new technologies. 800-874-9760. That's 800-874-9760. Or visit them online at rrbi.co. That's rrbi.co. Let's jump back into the article, and they're saying there are no mistakes. There are only experiences, and instead of beating yourself up over a mistake, you should really ask yourself, what is the lesson? What can be learned from this experience? What kindness, the author writes in those 7 lovely words, what can be learned from this experience? There's freedom in your mistakes. And I forget who said it, but there's a famous quote that I will paraphrase because I don't remember exactly what it says, but it's something along the lines of, I would rather be exposed to the danger of too much freedom than the tyranny of not enough. And the real freedom means being free to make a mistake, or rather, the freedom to teach yourself a life lesson. There's freedom in your mistakes. The idea that there are no mistakes astounded me, writes the author. It was an entirely new way of thinking because I was so entrenched in my mistakes, I just assumed I had to live with them, that I'd always be weighted down with shame and feel disappointed in myself. What grabbed my attention so quickly and deeply was the idea that I could change how I saw a mistake, reframe how I thought about it, see a mistake as a lesson, and learn something from my actions and my choices. I began to learn that everything I experienced, even mistakes, was part of what I was meant to learn in my life, part of who I am, and that made for a great feeling of emotional freedom and relief. And as I mentioned, I know what my big mistake was, and I want you to think about the thing that, again, that thing, if you could go back and undo one thing in your life, I think everybody knows that one thing that jumps forward. They're like, yep, that's the one. Think about that for just a moment. And think about all of the things that have happened after you realized that was a mistake, and where you moved on with your life. And then think about what would you have done with your life had you not made that mistake. Whatever the mistake was, think about what you would have done had you not made that decision. And then try to compare. This is one of the things where I love alternate history. And if you're not familiar with alternate history, it's where people will look at this and say, if William the Conqueror had never crossed the English Channel, what would have happened? What would have happened to the four kingdoms of the Anglo-Saxons? What would have happened to France? What would have happened to the Vikings? What would have happened in North America? What would have happened here? What would have happened there? All of these things. And then think about where things are now. So you've got this different trajectory. It's kind of like, do you remember the movie Back to the Future, Part 2? Part 2, where Marty didn't steal, but he had bought that sports almanac, and then Biff stole the sports almanac, and Biff gave it to young Biff, and then young Biff wound up betting on stuff, and then it created this alternate Hill Valley, and it was just a completely different trajectory. So that's really how you need to look at your life, and then compare and contrast. And even though you can't actually go back and undo the mistake, so you can't go get in the DeLorean, go to 88.8 miles per hour, hit that 1.2 gigawatts or whatever it is. You can't do that and undo your decision, but just think and then look in your mind's eye how different those trajectories are. And I know for a fact that the trajectory that I would have gone down, the path that I would have gone down had I not made the big mistake that I made about 17 years ago, then I would not be doing what I am now. I really don't know what I would be doing, but I know that I would not have had a lot of the life experiences that I've had. And, this is one of those things of, if I had a reset button to where I could press the button and go back and undo stuff, I don't think I'd push the button. I really don't think I would go back and push the button, just because I know that I've had life experiences that I would not have had otherwise. There are no mistakes. There are only life lessons. Next, he says, no more suffering. Each of us is a combination of life events and experiences that we're proud of and happy with, and that are so painful, unfortunate things we may not like about ourselves, or rather we might not like ourselves for, and that we senselessly punish ourselves over. The author here says, I've made bad choices about money, investing in the wrong relationships and friends, failures at work. But this one principle revolutionized my life because I was able to look right at my worst mistakes and start to change. My unbearable mistakes became lessons to learn from, not something to continue beating myself up over. There's a little bit more that I'll go through here in the final moments of Peace, Love, Liberty Radio. Coinbase is a simple and secure online Bitcoin wallet for sending, receiving, and storing Bitcoin. Coinbase also allows you to buy and sell Bitcoin using a bank account or use their tools to accept Bitcoin as a merchant. Coinbase has more than 1 million consumer wallets and is trusted by over 25,000 merchants, including Overstock.com, Khan Academy, Reddit, and of course, FPP. Get started at coinbase.fppradio.com. You can support FPP Radio by joining the Fans program. Fans are friends, allies, and numerary supporters. Fans help FPP afford to produce more original content. You can join the Fans program for as little as $3 per month through Patreon and get perks like ad-free versions of FPP Radio News and Peace, Love, Liberty Radio. To learn more or to join the Fans program, visit fans.fppradio.com. That's FANS.fppradio.com.
You're listening to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio with Darryl W. Perry.
Hey, welcome back to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio, online at fppradio.com. Just a little bit more in this article about there are no mistakes, just happy little accidents, life lessons, if you will. The author of the article, Michael Feely, says the first thing to change in me. He says, once I ended a 5-year relationship with someone I learned was a chronic liar, I discovered lie after lie about the person's business, family, and life. Trusting this person with my mind and heart was the biggest mistake I ever made. And for years after, I buried myself in anger and shame. It took time for me to regain my integrity because I felt I had sold myself out, betrayed the best things in me. It was the one I did. There are no mistakes, only lessons to be learned that helped me see the truth. I took action and went after learning. I wanted to know exactly what happened, what my part in the trouble was, how I had agreed to be manipulated, how my own greed, desire for power, and comfort had created this situation. It was not easy to look at myself, to see my motives and choices, and how my values were out of whack. But the more I learned about myself, the freer, happier, and stronger I became. I was getting back to who I truly was, and it felt good. Change happened quickly as I looked honestly at my mistakes and saw the facts. I had a new hope and intention that once it was all seen and understood, it would never happen again. I was definitely learning to love the messes of my life, he writes, and I used them to rebuild my life and reputation and to make it into something I am proud of. And now written in bold letters, he says, what you see as mistakes are opportunities to discover the truth about yourself, and seeing the truth enables you to make new choices for your happiness and success. Irish novelist and poet James Joyce once said, mistakes are portals of discovery. What a wonderful and wise and inspiring way to see mistakes, don't you think? Why not pull open the closed doorways to the things you see as mistakes and let in some light to discover the truth? It's a life-changing opportunity, an incredible chance to change mistakes into learning and life happiness, and to be more of who you truly are, and it really works. There are no mistakes. Just remember that. If you take nothing from this episode, remember, in the words of Bob Ross, there are no mistakes, just happy little accidents. Figure out what the lesson is from those happy little accidents. Don't forget, every Wednesday I answer your questions. Send those over AMA@fppradio.com.
The podcasts of FPP Radio are licensed under Copyright. We believe that copying is a form of flattery and do not abide by the copyright laws. Those laws serve to restrict the flow of ideas, which no one can really own. Copying is an act of love. Love is not subject to law. If you enjoy the show, consider joining the Fans program and get perks like ad-free versions of Peace, Love, Liberty Radio and FPP Radio News. To learn more or to join the Fans program, visit fans.fppradio.com.